was 1874 when Julius Verne imagined a future where hydrogen could be used as a source of heat and light. And now, almost 150 years later, Verne's dream could eventually, finally come true. Welcome everyone to the H2 Road to Net Zero, a conference organized by Bloomberg in collaboration with IRENA and SNAM. So today we're going to discuss which is the road to get to net zero emission, a road which is clearly boosting the appeal of the lightest element, hydrogen. As my Bloomberg New Energy Finance colleagues pointed out a few weeks ago, nearly everything is set to double this year in the world of clean hydrogen, from the number of countries creating hydrogen strategies to also the number of electrolyzer installation all over the world. So we're going to discuss today which role could really have not gray, more blue and green hydrogen in the next decade. And before a chat with Minister Roberto Cingolani, hosted by our government reporter in Rome, Chiara Albanese, let's start with some precious opening remarks. So it's a pleasure to have a message today from Senator John Kerry, who is currently United States Special Envoy for Climate.
My friends, good afternoon. I wish I could join you in person for this exciting conversation, but I wanted to nonetheless underscore just how important this topic is. Hydrogen, the very first element of the periodic table, has long fascinated and frustrated those who know its potential as an energy vector. Cost has been a habitual challenge, but the coming years may see clean hydrogen deploy at commercial scale in a way that unlocks countless new opportunities. I recommend reading Marco's writings on this topic. He has a vision for building a vibrant global hydrogen economy in the decade ahead, a vision that reduces emissions, creates jobs, and helps us to bring a net zero clean energy future ever closer. For all of you working to make this vision a reality, we aren't just rooting for your success. The future of our planet may very well depend on it. I personally have seen, as I travel around the world, so many countries now engaged in clean hydrogen research, in green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, all of the possibilities. I believe it really does offer us one of the best shots at resolving this great challenge that we face. So thank you, all of you. Thank you again, and let's get to work.
Thank you, Senator Terry. Now, I think we should have in line Nigel Topping. Let me see if he appears on our screen here. Good afternoon, Nigel. Nigel Topping is United States high-level climate action champion for COP26. Nigel, so I'll start with the words that Senator Kerry said at the end of his speech. Let's get to work. So tell us which is your view and the prospect for hydrogen in the transition away from combustion engines, from coal, and to get to net zero really.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. It's a real pleasure to join you today. And I'd particularly like to thank Bloomberg, IRENA, and SNAM for helping convene. This is a very well-timed gathering, just 1 month ahead of what we are all aiming to make a historic COP, the first, as I call it, the first implementation COP, really focused on action. And my role as the high-level champion is to work with the private sector and local governments to drive ambition and action. I think that we're seeing real momentum building amongst that community. We have now over 6,000 businesses, cities, investors committing to science-based pathways to net zero. That includes over 250 asset owners, asset managers, and banks managing $90 trillion of wealth. and that momentum has been reinforced by the G7 and G20 recently. And really encouragingly, and my personal learning journey started with the Energy Transitions Commission work on hydrogen. Obviously, Marco was very much at the heart of that, and like many of you, I've also learned from his books. He has to keep rewriting the book because things change so fast. But really encouragingly, for example, last week I was just hosting a roundtable with some major German companies, all of whom 3 years ago would have been considered hard to abate or even too hard to abate. So, you know, Heidelberg Cement, Wacker Chemie, ThyssenKrupp Steel, all of them now committed to getting to zero. And the end consumer pull from businesses like Amazon with their commitment to get to net zero along their full value chain by 2040 is also pulling. But we know that long-term commitments are only as good as near-term action. We know that, and we don't have to agree, but we know that 2050 will be something like 15% hydrogen in the mix. But to be on track, we really do have to drive the costs down fast this decade. So I'm really pleased to see several members of the Green Hydrogen Catapult like SNAM and Aqua Power at today's event. The Green Hydrogen Catapult was launched less than a year ago to drive the cost down in the short term, get 25 gigawatts deployed, get the cost down to below $2 a kilogram. I think very much in line with Senator Kerry's and the administration's hydrogen earthshot of $1 a kilogram by 2030. So the exciting thing is now we're seeing more and more people investing along that pathway. I think the point you made about this year everything doubling. This is the nature of exponential change in industrial disruption. Yeah. That things, it's like we have a Moore's law of green hydrogen that's starting to kick in. So that 26 gigawatts seems low compared to the 130 of electrolysis already committed to 2030, which we expect to be 3 to 5 times as much by the time we actually get to 2030. We've, in our role within the UN process, tried to capture this momentum in 2030 energy pathways, very much a synthesis of the work by IRENA, IEA, Bloomberg, the Energy Transitions Commission, and others. We think that to drive this transformation, we really need to ground it in 3 fundamental frames. Firstly, sound evidence, so that we are fact-based in our discussions, not ideological. Second, genuine investment and business plans, so not just long-term targets, but where's the capex and where's the government support in early stages. And thirdly, better ways of organizing and collaborating globally. I think we can take a lot of inspiration from the way the mobile technology industry organizes around generations of technology, which are pre-competitively designed to allow the whole sector to go as fast as possible. We're so familiar with it now that we forget that going from 4G to 5G is a pre-competitively agreed technology pathway. So I think that at this stage, aligning expectations is going to be crucial to build trust. And I think that means we need this conversation about the race to mobilizing high volumes of hydrogen to be mature. And we think make sure that we have some clear principles by which we conduct this conversation, particularly that we always consider the full value chain impacts. So we're looking at full value chain emissions when we're considering the whole rainbow of hydrogen colors, and that we are seriously looking at what the learning effect opportunities are for cost reduction in each of these different approaches to scaling up hydrogen. We're working on a set of principles with the partners in the UN Marrakesh Partnership, which we'll publish shortly to try and contribute to that. Time's too short and efficiency in our approach is too urgently needed to be bogged down in ideological conversations. This is an engineering challenge and we need the language of engineering and economics to drive it. From my own experience, I'm extremely positive about this transition being one of the key drivers. I hope it's one of the stories which is told loudly and wildly in the run-up to and at COP26, so that some of the naysayers who think that nobody is doing enough and who are starting to give up hope can see that the dynamism of the interaction between the public and private sphere in driving the radical cost reduction and the radical volume deployment in hydrogen is part of how we drive the transition to the zero carbon future and together win the race to zero. Really looking forward to hearing the conversation. And with that, I'll end my remarks. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thanks, Nigel. And now I'm really honored to invite to the podium our Minister Roberto Cingolani, who is in charge of such an enormous task, which is, leading the ecological transition of Italy. Please, grazie Roberto, who will be interviewed by Chiara Albanese. And as usual with Roberto, we expect a frank and insightful conversation. Thank you.
Grazie Roberto, and thanks everyone for joining. It's so good to finally have and chair an in-person event. So this is also a quite special week to discuss climate change here in Milan, right? You're here for a week, and climate change, I mean, has got so many narratives. Yesterday we saw you kneeling almost on the floor talking to Greta Thunberg, right? She was tired after traveling with a backpack. She said right after or just before that politicians are just able to speak empty words. But I think the key message and also the mission that you have is the same. Before we get to hydrogen, quickly, what did you tell Greta?
Well, when she arrived, and not only Greta, also Vanessa, the other girl, the other activist, we just had a chat to introduce each other, say welcome. And I told her I'm a scientist, everybody knows this. Till 8 months ago, I was in a lab, and I will go back to a lab in the future. And I said, I do agree with the fact that we need to believe science, in science, we need to listen to science, technology will provide the solution. She said, yes, we agree, we're saying this. That was all. Then she came to the stage. I think Vanessa made a very good point. She said, the situation in our countries, the different states in Africa, it's really, at the moment, dramatic. And she made a compilation of examples of that was emotional. It was really terrible. And the message was, vulnerable countries are paying the bill of the climatic change. The bill, are undergoing the damage of the climatic change, not the bill in terms of financials, of course, in a terrific way. And apparently we ignored this. And it's easier to fight the climate change being in a G7 country, to be clear. Afterwards, Greta came. Well, okay, she has a language that is typical of the young people. They have to protest, raise a little bit the attention. That's understandable. We've been young, all of us. It was the same. But besides the blah, 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 I think she said, we don't think you did enough in the past. Well, I do agree. Maybe the growth model should have been different. Maybe the second message was, we don't believe very much what you're saying. That is, of course, in the back of the mind, she has the fact that young people don't feel involved. So ultimately, I think that if we get off the language itself, that sometimes is different. This is a millennial people. At least I am old.
Almost
you're not.
We're quite millennial.
Yeah, quite millennial. A lot, quite a lot. So besides the language, I think the message was, we have a climatic emergency, Vanessa. We have a social inequality. We have a climatic emergency, Greta. We have a global social inequality problem, Vanessa. And you have to put the two things together. Whoever thinks that we can fix the problem vertically with a digital button on, off, and we fix it, it's just, well, in the best case, is a bit naive. Maybe it's worse. We're saying the same. We're saying with a different language, of course, with a different responsibility, and also having in mind the fact that we have to merge different distances, different needs. It's not easy. It's called democracy. And we have to do it. So ultimately, I found a very good convergence.
Complicated.
Yeah.
But thanks. We're here today in this forum to discuss hydrogen. Snam has been one of the pioneers in Italy in that. But when And will we ever see a Ferrari powered by hydrogen?
Okay, look.
And actually, let me expand on the question.
Yeah.
Which sectors do you see hydrogen
Yeah.
implemented most quickly and in the easiest way?
This question
Ferrari
makes-
is just the tip of the iceberg, clearly.
This question makes my life easier. I got my number here, so
Sure, okay.
handwritten. So, well, of course, I don't know when a Ferrari will be powered by hydrogen. You should ask Ferrari people or hyper-performant cars. But for sure, this is the ideal energy vector. Everybody knows in chemistry and in physics. I don't think there is any discussion behind. Now, the extent to which this will become the main power source, it depends on many different circumstances that we have to match all together. Let me say what we are doing that implicitly contains the answer to your question. We are investing 3.2 billion on the hydrogen strategy within the recovery resilience plan, which is no marginal part of the energy transition budget that is approximately 25, 27 billions. Now, you have to consider that we have very urgent program to launch. So 3.2 for a most innovative way, it's in line with the French and American French and German initiatives. Germany started before, but if you see in the recovery plan, they're more or less at the same level. So about 160 million will be in R&D. We urge to have people developing technologies. I mean, of course, NAM is leading, but I think we need the background knowledge in the country, starting with PhD students, postdocs, small, medium enterprises. There are many aspects of the hydrogen technology should be powered. Then there will be approximately half a billion for the so-called Hydrogen Valley contribution. This is going to be not a direct investment on the Hydrogen Valley. It's sort of leverage for private investment. It's sort of matching fund, if you wish. We have a number of brown areas that have to be reconverted, and it's ideal to reconvert them among other technologies with the hydrogens. So it's supposed to be a spark to leverage also private funds. 2 billions, two and something, a bit more than 2 billions on the hard-to-abate sectors of manufacturing. Well, needless to say, you can envisage a solution for a partial solution for the ILVA problem, for instance, in the steel company, by transforming the main furnaces, the blast furnaces, into gas furnaces at first, and then as soon as possible into hydrogen furnaces. This is the way to decarbonize the hard-to-abate sectors. It pretty much the same holds for paper, cement, fabrics and tissues. You know, Italy is the second manufacturing power in this continent, and we have to clearly face the problem that manufacturing is responsible for 30% of carbon dioxide production, and the other one is mobility, responsible for 25%. So mobility is another sector where we have to invest. There, I do see a bit more far the application, primarily because you have to raise the offer of the fuel, hydrogen fuel, and the demand of cars being powered. At the moment, there are 3-4 cars on the market, but they exist. There are trucks, there are buses. So there is a sort of menu of vehicles that could be considered. So, for instance, we're going to have a plan where we're going to implement a project for creating 40 hydrogen stations along the roads in the country, north to south. I think it's designed to be approximately heavy 250 kilometers. So first of all, a German truck driver who wants to come from Munich to, I don't know, Reggio Calabria, in principle can fill the truck.
He's got 30, ideally, places to stop and refuel
Let's
the
say
truck.
maybe 20 on both sides. But and of course, this have been designed since the very beginning with the idea to have hydrogen injector, hydrogen pumps operating both at 300 millibar, 300 bar and 700 bars. 700 is for cars, 300 is for trucks. So it's already conceived for a sort of 100% vehicle characteristics. We finally, is the last one,
Sure.
so I conclude. I think we should be careful in investing a lot on those new technologies, pretty much like the solar, the photovoltaics, the eolic, and everything. If we don't empower our supply chain, so producing hydrolyzer in this country will become mandatory if we really want to boost the hydrogen transition. So that will be about $500 million for the supply chain. There, well, the struggle is to find a way to realize a sort of private-public enterprise to have an internal and national supply chain, as it's very important. And before everything I told you, this hydrogen should be produced directly by green energy. So through hydrolyzers, not through carbon capture, because this was not possible with the recovery plan. That means that we have to speed up as much as possible the installation of our renewable energy power stations. So I think the dream will come true when we'll have at least a penetration in the energy mix of renewable electricity up to 50%. At that point, you can seriously say, okay, it makes sense. Of course, there are other ways to produce hydrogen, everybody knows. But in the recovery plan, we had to be very careful that the directives and the guidelines were very clear. Only green hydrogen could have been proposed. So for the time being, we stay on green hydrogen production. We're perfectly aware you can produce in a different way, but based on this public European money, this is the way we have to pursue. So we're starting with the new bids for the renewable energy, and this is fundamental. If you want to start with the electric mobility, hard-to-abate sectors, hydrogen, you need to have renewable energy at your plug. That's all.
Very interesting. You mentioned Ilva. This has been like a thorny issue for Italy for some time, but it's also an asset. It's a huge site with a well-plugged local area. Do you see Ilva as a possible good fit to develop hydrogen in Italy? Or
I want to be clear. I was mentioning as a typical prototypical example of steel company. Ilva is a very complicated site with a very complicated history. Whatever I say now, it could be misunderstood. There is a lot of work.
You're not in court, but
no.
Yeah.
But no, you understand. There's a lot of sensitivity about that. For sure. In a super large steel company, the transition to gas and hydrogen is welcome to decarbonize, but of course we have to consider many other issues there.
Sure.
But if you see everywhere in the world, there is a tendency to transform steel production into green steel production. So hydrogen is one of the ways. That's why, for the time being, I would stay more on the perspective of the technology rather than discussing the specific case, because that could be a bit more complicated.
Okay, clear, thank you. Until a few months ago, you were a scientist, but today you're a member of Mario Draghi's government, and this one is a government that has promised to reform and easy and speed up Italy's bureaucracy. Now we've got some investors and we've got several watching us that have lamented also partly Italy's long time when it comes to having the authorization process to build new renewable sites and plants. I mean, what can you tell investors? What is the government doing to make their life easy in this transition?
This is something we did already. After approving the master plan for the recovery plan and having the approval by the European Commission, consequently we got the down payment, by the way. The second decree, the important decree, was the so-called Decreto Semplificazione, simplification decree, in which we revolutionized a little the entire pipeline. I mean, just to give you main indication, so far the statistics tell us that a permit pipeline normally takes 1,200 days. So with the new decree, we should shorten to 250 days approximately. So it's a factor of 5 or so. And also we're publishing the roadmap of the bids for renewable energy power station, new power stations. So the investors will see on a roadmap in the next 5 years when we're supposed to launch the new bids. And that's very important, because if you don't make it to present to submit your proposal at this trimester, you know that there is another trimester or maybe a quarter, whatever, that there's another bid, so you can plan your action. In the past, it was a bit more difficult because nobody knew when would have been the next bid. So, they were rushing, and, maybe the project was incomplete. And this was overloading the Commissione Valutazione Ambientale. And by the way, last but not least, we have created a new committee for the evaluation environmental impact, which will consist of up to 40 members full-time that will be dedicated entirely to the recovery plan, entirely.
So you think that this problem that some investors face has been somehow solved, addressed, eased, lightened?
I think we put the rules and the basis to be faster.
Yeah.
We have to see what happens in the next bid. I mean, as you know, the last two tenders, we were launched, we were opening for 2 gigawatt, and we got the second last 0.4 gigawatt offer, and the last 0.2. So when you get 10% of the offer in front of a bid, it means that you're not attractive. So we have to do something. I think what we did, it's very coherent with the idea we have to speed up. Once again, we have to install 70 gigawatt of renewable power stations in the next 9 years. That means 8 gigawatt every year. And for the information of the audience, Italy at the moment is installing 0.8 gigawatt every year. So the promise is we increment by a factor of 10 our infrastructure capability. I don't sleep very well for that, but we have to do it.
Clear. I mean, climate transition, energy transition has got a huge cost. We as Italians, but everyone in Europe is seeing it in their energy bills, right? We saw today, you warned the country a few days back, the government intervened with 3 billions. We saw today the confirmation that in the last quarter, the cost of electricity will go up something like 30%. I mean, how the government, or should the government address this in a more permanent way for private people and also for companies?
That is a slightly misleading description of, not yours in general, as a rumor, as a voice, slightly misleading description of the problem. I mean, it's not the transition that is increasing the bills. The bills are increasing because the prime matter,
right.
the gas has been increasing steadily over over almost 1 year. This reflects maybe some market nervousness. You know, we call the market nervous. Okay, that's the case, and there are reasons for that, many reasons. The Nord Stream, some problem in Russia, maybe the fact that we are demonizing gas continuously. So of course the provider are worried. It has nothing to do with the transition. To be fair, 80% of the increase in the bill comes from the increase of the cost of gas, whereas 20% comes from the increase of carbon dioxide cost. So if you really want to connect, you should consider the cost of carbon dioxide. But we all agree that we have to raise the price of carbon dioxide. Otherwise, people will not be discouraged in producing carbon dioxide. So now, let me answer more philosophically to the question. I've never seen a transition that is costless. If something is costless, you don't need any transition. You do it, period. So this is a gigantic challenge. It's not only energy, not only the energy transition. I'm actually hammering on a concept over the last few weeks. We have the ecological transition. We have to keep the temperature rise around 1.5. We all agree. There is no B plan. There is no other way. So we should not repeat this forever. We know it. But the transition has to be sustainable. No one left behind. So what we are planning now deals with the G20. 4.8 billion people producing 80% of the carbon dioxide that are making a fantastic program, though with something to fix like China, Russia, but you know, we're not so different, and we can recover. But there are 3 billion people left. 1 billion has no access to electricity, and most of them have no access to clean fuel to cook. So they undergo house pollution, not exterior pollution. What are we going to say to these people? What is the definition of ecological transition for people having no electricity? So that is the challenge in the challenge. We have to do our best to keep the temperature under control, but if we don't reduce global social inequality, this ecological transition will never come really and completely true. The cost, to me, is this one. We were supposed to give 100 billion every year to the vulnerable countries. We hardly reached 60. Then we had the COVID, and the COVID, of course, was a big problem for everybody. Now we potentially, possibly re-emerge from the COVID emergency. Our economies are, well, sort of stressed. it's even more difficult to create a financial aid program, but we have to do it, because if we don't do it, it will be difficult to manage a global transition, leaving behind 3 billion people. So this is the cost that we have to include, and this is the interest of everybody, our kids, our children, our nephew, and the vulnerable countries.
Though, in the meantime, there is a cost on Italians and on Europeans, but will the Italian government intervene again and structure intervene again?
About the bills?
About the bills?
Yeah, sure. We did something now very quick to mitigate the increase of the bill, the increase of prices. This was primarily directed to weaker social classes, with little low ISEE, and maybe with 3 children, there are classifications, small, medium enterprises. That was mandatory to be done immediately with what we had. But of course, we're working to something more, say, structural, the way we compute the bill. And this is, however, true everywhere in Europe, everywhere in the world, because it's a global problem. So I think the reaction was prompt, was good, was promising. I think we'll do a good job. And I would like to say something more about the transition, because since I'm maybe too numerical in my approach, I know I'm not political enough, possibly, but I like numbers. But ultimately, today I was talking to some young activists, and they told me, because they were engineers, okay, we understand your point, but you communicate in a way that is scaring people. In some sense, they're right. The numbers are numbers, so not negotiable, no politics behind the numbers. But we should communicate the immense opportunity we have to create new workforce, new jobs, new economy with the transition. So the transition is not only a big problem, a big cost, it's also a massive opportunity for the future. The point is that we have to accept not only the rich countries, but everybody, that we've been developing at the expense of the planet. Now we have to change in a development model that is in favor of the planet. It's always a development model, but we change against versus in favor. But to do this, we have to recover the 3 billion people. I insist. That is the fundamental point in the entire global ecological transition model.
And those 3 billion people that you mentioned, I mean, they're led by leaders, right? And we've got 2 big meetings coming up, the G20 in Rome, and then we've got the COP26. And even if Europe reaches its Fit for 55 targets, which are clearly ambitious, I mean, that's not enough to make an impact, because we know that the big polluters are the countries as well. Are you confident we'll actually get them to sign significant commitments?
Recent signals were encouraging. I mean, China stated that they're going to stop building coal power stations abroad. Turkey declared that they're going to match the Paris Agreement targets. I think there is a global awareness that is rising. Well, we should have the right expectation for the COP26. I mean, you cannot expect COP26 digitally in one day to fix the problem. Okay, it's good if we end up in the COP26 with a good message in terms of financial aid to the vulnerable countries. It is good whether we can bring on board more strong countries in accelerating the transition. A couple of years ago, the issue was 2 degrees. Now is around 1.5. That half degree makes a big difference, maybe 15 centimeters in the sea level, just to give an example. So we really have to believe, we have to convince, bring along everybody on along the same direction, and of course, reducing inequalities. Otherwise, we're playing. I think those are signals that we can give at the COP26. Tomorrow, we'll see Alok Sharma is coming, the president.
Yep.
I like the idea that we're going to discuss the delivery of the Youth for Climate people, the 400 young people that are now working, and this evening they will present the proposals. Tomorrow we will present the proposal to the young people, to the President of the Republic, to Mario Draghi, to Boris Johnson, Alok Sharma, and then we will forward those proposals to the COP26. Yeah, there is a great opportunity. We might have good surprises by the young people proposals. The COP26 can make those proposals sort of global proposals. Well, there is a lot of work to be done. Yeah, that's true. It won't be a gala dinner, for sure. But I think if this were easy, we would have done it already.
Minister, look, thank you. I would love to discuss that for the whole day, but I think we've got
Finished.
a big agenda coming up. So thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
joining, actually.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, Chiara. Thanks to Minister Cingolani. So I think we have a headline: transition won't be a gala dinner, but there are a lot of opportunities. Now I'm actually ask Minister Cingolani to stay on the podium, because now it's the moment where they're going to be the signature ceremony of a partnership between SNAM and IRENA. So I welcome Francesco La Camera, Director General of IRENA, and Marco Alverà, CEO of SNAM, with the minister in front of the minister. They can sign the partnership. As the two companies, they will cooperate to identify and potentially develop projects to produce and transport clean hydrogen. So that's the MOU. Please. Grazie mille, thanks a lot. So, Francesco, you can stay, you can have a seat and stay on the podium, because I'm now give the floor to my counterpart in Rome. We run Italy from Milan and Rome. I'm Milan Bureau Chief, and Rome Bureau Chief is Alessandro Speciale, who is going to moderate the next panel with Marco, Francesco, and some guests which are remotely connected. Alessandro.
Thank you, Tommaso, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Francesco, and I hope also thank you to Paddy and Anna, our guests who should be connected remotely. I'm really, really happy to be moderating this panel, the first part of our conversation, and especially on how to make the promise of hydrogen real and how it will contribute to the energy transition that we have been talking so much. We have heard Minister Cingolani, the energy transition won't be a gala dinner, and it means that it won't be easy. There are a lot of challenges, practical challenges, and how can I put it, mental challenges as well for us, for everyone in business, for everyone in the economy, for consumers, for citizens, for politicians on how to manage this transition. And probably, and I'm going to turn now to our first panelist, Marco Alverà, the CEO of SNAM. There is probably no one like Marco, at least in Italy, who has thought and tried to solve the challenges of how to make the promise of hydrogen real. I think it was 2 years ago that you were in Rome and you were extolling the values and the promise of hydrogen, and even only 2 years ago that seemed so far away, and you had just started probably your experimentation with hydrogen. How far have we come in those 2 years? How close are we to making the eternal promise of hydrogen? Because let's not forget that there has been many cycles where hydrogen was the next big thing just waiting to happen. How far are we to making it real?
Thank you, Alessandro, and thank you all for being here, and to IRENA and to Bloomberg for making this possible. It's really incredible. As Nigel Topping said, I have to keep writing books because they come out of date so quickly. In the last 2 years, the hydrogen world has really changed. 2 years ago, we had no visible demand. We had wide, very different ranges of predictions of how big the market it was going to be, from non-existent to very small was the range we had. And the cost of hydrogen used to be $1,000 per megawatt hour. 3 years ago, it was around $200 per megawatt hour. Today, it's 100. And what's really changed is that the cost of solar and the predictions of the cost of solar has come down really, really low. We now have auctions in Saudi Arabia for $10.4 a megawatt hour, and in Portugal for 13. They used to be at 60, and my own expectation 3 years ago was that we were going to get to 30 maybe by the end of the decade. So we ended up at 10 in 2021. And the other component are the costs of the electrolyzers. They have come down almost in half over the last 3 years. So we're now able to look at a map like Nigel said earlier with the green hydrogen catapult. That's Snam, Iberdrola, Aquapower, Yara, Envision of China, 7 companies that get together to say we commit and we deliver this promise to the COP debate to making green hydrogen at $2 a kilo, which means 50 euros per megawatt hour, so half of today's price in the next 5 years. When we presented this to Secretary Kerry, who I thank for his kind words at the opening today, the Department of Energy came back with their own version of our moonshot, which they call the Earth shot, to make green hydrogen at $25 a megawatt hour over the next decade, so by the end of the decade, by 2030. So I'm sorry if I've given a lot of numbers, but 1,000, 200, 100 today, 50, 25. Why are 50 and 25 important? Because 50 means break even with oil, let's say standardized oil at around $50 a barrel, and 25 means break even with gas and coal. And that's really the only way we can get Asia off coal, is to provide them a cheaper green alternative. So our expectation, our hope is that in the COP discussions, these numbers get firmer and firmer, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I really thank both IRENA and Bloomberg for their excellent research that leads to this number. So what really changed in the last 2 years is that we now have predictions for the role of hydrogen that don't go from 0 to very small. They range from IRENA's 14% of the primary energy mix to Bloomberg's up to 25%. I would take a midway course, say around 20, but that's a huge market that we have to build, starting from scratch. But the good news is that the momentum is there, and the real breakthrough comes with the factories. We now have 9 gigawatts of gigafactories planned. 95% of those are in Europe, and so all these recovery efforts will help accelerate some real cutting-edge, world-leading European technology for this.
Thank you, Marco. And I now want to turn to Francesco La Camera, the Director General of IRENA, which is the International Renewable Energy Agency. It's an international organization, and they prepare a really fascinating read, the World Energy Transitions Outlook, which is really helpful to situate the role of hydrogen, and especially green hydrogen. That's for the newbies in the sector like me. That's hydrogen produced completely from renewable sources, so with zero net emissions, in the energy mix that we're going to need if we want to keep world temperatures rising maximum 1.5 degrees by 2050. And that means a huge energy transformation. Green hydrogen is a part of it. It's a big part of it, but of course it's the main part of it. So Francesco, could you help us situate the role of hydrogen and also put into perspective the numbers that Marco was saying in the huge effort that must be done worldwide and on many other sectors to make sure that we keep temperature rise in check?
Oh, grazie. Thanks, Alessandro. And as you say, we try to picture in our World Energy Transition Outlook a possible pathway to stay with 1.5 degrees. In fact, it's not just a document that discusses the technologies, but also a document that discusses the policy, the tool, the instrument that we may have to make the necessary change possible. You know, in our opinion, then the main driver of the energy transition as the profound electrification, of the system and the energy efficiency. So these are the two main drivers. And in this context, the three main avenues that we identify are renewables, green hydrogen, and the modern biomass. Concerning hydrogen means that we estimate that hydrogen will contribute to the decreasing of the global CO2 emission from now to 2050 by 10%. And at the same time, you can go to satisfy in terms of final consumption up to 14%. So I think it's a tremendous contribution to the new energy system. We have also to think that hydrogen is also an enabler. So it's not only directly contributing, but is the best and most effective way possible to decarbonize sectors that are not easy to electrify. And during our lunch, in our informal discussion, this came very natural. So someone was talking about the long shipping, the long haul transport. Someone was talking about the steel and the big industries. We are not discussing about building, but also on that area, it can play a major role. And having this double role that you can use hydrogen for ensuring flexibility into the system. I don't know why I like in this period to talk always about nuclear, because I still see people that are talking about nuclear. Someone is talking about nuclear because, you know, the renewables are variable source of energy. So nuclear could be a way to ensure flexibility. How you can on and off a nuclear plant when you like. And it's so funny. And discussing the price, and Marco can tell better than any other one here in this room, it's so evident that 1 kilowatt produced by renewables or green hydrogen will cost 5 times time that the same amount of energy produced by nuclear. So that's really out of our space. So that's the reason for being green hydrogen, because it is also covering the imagination of something completely new, technological advanced, that may be the right answer. Naturally, we have to understand and focus. For example, we have just a brief discussion between us about building business model for green hydrogen is important. Take into account that the market are not yet designed to make hydrogen be really, really important. So market design, business model are all part of the same aspect to make an environment that is favorable to the affirmation of hydrogen. I have to admit, honestly, that naturally I'm not in all terms in favor of other form of hydrogen that is not green, but I have to confess that in some particular part of the world where accelerating transition to green may destroy the economy of those countries and make things more difficult. I imagine the Gulf, and not only the Gulf. There, the blue hydrogen could play a role. And building the markets that 2 years ago didn't exist, and now it seems so evident. We have heard about possibility to make hydrogen, make the train working. And it's fantastic. In certain countries, there are not many electrify lines. And also, if you want to electrify, much more convenient to go for hydrogen. So it's really an important vector, and is important also a source of power.
Thank you, Francesco. And I see now that our 2 panelists who are connected remotely are with us as well. Let me announce them briefly before turning to them. We have Paddy Padmanathan, who is the president and CEO of ACWA Power, the Saudi power company and utility. And we have Ana Kelhas, who's the managing director for hydrogen of the EDP Group, the Portuguese electricity and power group. I will first turn to Paddy. I'm following a strict alphabetical order here. And we have been talking about the challenges of how to turn the promise of hydrogen real, of how the technology and the steps to make the prices go down are actually taking shape in how to reconvert. And probably Paddy is, well, by the way, congratulations on a recent and successful IPO of his company. He will be able to tell us how these projects are going, because ACWA Power is starting and proceeding with a big project to produce green hydrogen at large scale in Saudi Arabia, in the research city of Neom. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. So how is this project going? How is the scaling up going? Because as we have seen, the capacity is still very small worldwide compared to where we have to go, even with the most conservative projections up to 2050.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Delighted to be with you. I'm very sorry that I'm not there physically, but the modern day and age, we are able to connect digitally, virtually. Look, Marco summarized it extremely well. And through the first project that we are very advanced with, we see the evidence of it. The reason why this time around green hydrogen is for real is because of the phenomenal advances in a lot of areas: material sciences, technology, driving down manufacturing costs, all the rest of it coming together. And the most important one is obviously 65+% of the cost of producing green hydrogen is the cost of energy. And we are able to deliver renewable energy when the sun is shining and when the wind is blowing. And don't forget, the wind is blowing at night too in certain parts of the world, the same parts of the world. We're able for 17+ hours deliver energy at 1.5 cents or less per kilowatt hour. That's really what is making it real. And through the first project that we are working, we have already gone into some advanced procurement even on that first project. It's a 240,000 tons per annum green hydrogen production facility, which is going to convert that to liquid ammonia to produce 1.15 million tons of liquid ammonia per annum for then shipping it for export. Now, that particular complex will be fed with 4,500 megawatts of renewable energy. It's about a $6.5+ billion of investment. We are very advanced with design and some of the early procurement even. Our expectation is to go into full construction early next year in order to be dispatching liquid ammonia first quarter 2026. So very much on track. And through that, we are able to see how quickly the costs can come down. We're still working through it. And very, very soon, I fully expect us to be able to share numbers, but we can see this target of $2 to produce hydrogen per kilo by 2025 is possibly not ambitious enough. We don't need to be so paranoid about it. I think we'll get there very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paddy. And thank you, Paddy. And in fact, I'm going to have more questions about the details, because, like, how do you make it real? But before that, I'm really, really happy to have Ana Kelhas from the EDP Group on the panel. Unfortunately, also, she couldn't be here physically, so she's connecting with us remotely from Lisbon. And the reason for that is that the EDP Group, and Ana, correct me if I'm wrong, already produces 74% of its power from renewable sources, something more, something less. And this means that, I mean, for a company that has already relying, that is already producing in a sustainable way 74, I mean, 3/4 of its energy. What is the role of hydrogen in such an, for a company that is already relying so much on renewable sources? And more generally, where do you see in a picture where renewable sources are already there, are already the majority of the reality of the energy mix, where do you situate hydrogen in this company and in a decarbonized world?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. Not physically, but be participating in this panel and sharing some thoughts with you. So you mentioned it very well, and it's very correct. At EDP, 3/4 of our electricity generation already comes from renewable energies. In fact, we today own and operate around 20 gigawatts of renewable, and we have a very clear commitment going forward with the complete decarbonization agenda. I mean, our investments going forward, we are planning to invest 24 billion in the next 5 years for our business plan, and that investment is fully dedicated to renewables. It's 80% dedicated to renewables, 15% to networks, and the remaining to the energy management and customer solutions. So we have a very strong commitment to by 2025 to become coal-free, completely coal-free. So for all of our coal assets, either they are decommissioning or we are finding an alternative for them, and by 2030 to be all green. So that means also not incorporate natural gas in our operations. So I guess within this DNA, I would say the renewable hydrogen, which is a topic that brings us here today to this discussion, fits perfectly well within our DNA. We strongly believe that the fact that we are a global leader in renewables, that we have a very strong engineering and technical skills from many years of developing big hydropower plants, even the thermal power plants, and for sure we will never again build a coal power plant, right? So we are refocusing and repurposing this knowledge and these engineering skills into the renewable hydrogen space. And also, I think it's also very important to have skills in developing innovative business solutions and business models, because really we are all innovating around hydrogen. We're talking about really a market that doesn't exist. So everything needs to be created, like it was already mentioned, the market design, the regulatory framework, the fiscal incentives, the business model. So having a strong tradition and background on innovation and establishing partnerships is critical to succeed in this space. And so if you ask me in more concrete terms what we're doing on hydrogen, I mean, we, as I mentioned, we will become coal-free by 2025. So one of the exercises that we're doing, and actually the more advanced projects and bigger projects that we have around renewable hydrogen, is really located in the facilities where today we have coal power plants that are in the process of being decommissioned and dismantling. Luckily, most of our coal power plants are located in regions and in sites where everything seems to come together for the renewable hydrogen business. We have good renewable resources, not just wind and solar, but a good mix of them in our markets. I mean, our focus is really the Iberia, Brazil, and the US. In these sites, we have local, heavy industries that are the most obvious candidates for the initial demand of these facilities, these hubs for producing renewable hydrogen. The grid connections, both electricity and gas, of course, and the support from policies to really promote these projects. So around most of our coal sites that are also located on the coasts or near deep water ports, we are developing renewable hydrogen hubs with the objective to first initially supply local consumption, and longer term to scale up and be ready to export to other markets the renewable hydrogen. We're also, of course, developing other typologies of projects, not so big, more driven by the demand and in the location where there are specific industrial or mobility applications for which the renewable hydrogen makes sense. And of course, it was already mentioned before, the value that hydrogen brings into the entire energy system as a means to provide flexibility and to really increase the efficiency of our energy system. And so on that aspect, we're also looking at our particular renewable assets existing in pipeline and really understanding where hybridizing hydrogen with our wind and solar projects could bring additional value to the system and unlock additional efficiencies.
Thank you very much, Anna. We'll return on some of these topics, but I would now, starting to get into the conversation proper, I would be curious to hear from you, Marco. So we have seen that, that we are getting there, but of course the technologies are being developed, but they are of course not there at scale, or some of the technologies are being developed. I'm thinking, for example, about electrolyzers, those that allow, with the use of energy, hopefully of renewable energy, of turning water into hydrogen and oxygen, dividing it into its two components. What are the challenges, the technical challenges that need to be scaled up in the next 30 years to increase production? I was seeing in the IRENA's report that we need to arrive at something like 5 terawatts, correct me, of installed electrolyzers by 2050 to meet the need. And we are now just in the tens of gigawatts, so very, very far away still. How do you see this distance being bridged?
As Roberto Cingolani said, it's not going to be a gala dinner. There are challenges. I would classify them in 3 categories. And we don't need to wait until 2050 or a fully decarbonized system. We need to get over the $2 and the $2 a kilo, which is $50 a megawatt hour that Paddy was referring to. And we're confident, both SNAM and Aqua and Iberdrola and a number of other companies, that we will get there. Once we get over this oil parity issue, then it's downhill from there. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the choice we have is, do we do this in the next 5 years, or do we do this in the next 15 years? Thankfully, a number of companies are pushing the envelope, or taking entrepreneurial risk, or putting R&D money, and are really breaking through the technologies. We talked earlier about the progress made just in the last 3 years. So there's 3 challenges. The first is to size the market. How big of a market is it going to be? The second is, how is the market going to look like? And the third is, how do we get going to break the chicken and egg dilemma between supply and demand? So the first, I would tick it. It's done. IRENA says 14%. Bloomberg says 25%. This is going to be a several trillion-dollar market, and I think the world is now clear on this, and we were nowhere near being clear just a couple of years ago. The market is big for the shipping, for the hard-to-abate, for the transportability. So big market, quickly becoming big, and a lot of brownfield conversions. The second point is, what's the market going to look like? And here we need political alignment. We need to come up and figure out, ideally at COP, who becomes the entity that certifies what hydrogen is. Because for oil, we can send an engineer on a ship, take a small bottle of the product, and we can trace it and identify from the ship where it came from. That's how they find out if Iranian oil is smuggled. That's how you trade oil in the markets, because you know what quality it is and where it is. Hydrogen, we won't be able to distinguish where it came from. And so we need to have a tracking system to know if it's green, if it's blue, if it's pink, if it's brown, if it's black. There's a whole rainbow, like Nigel put it, of hydrogen. So we need to quickly work out how we define hydrogen. And blue hydrogen doesn't mean anything, because you can have blue hydrogen with a lot of methane emissions and not a lot of CO2 capture, which can be worse than just natural gas. So we really need to define what blue means. Ideally, no methane emissions and 95 or not even 98% of CO2 capture. Then it becomes good blue. But we really need to define the standards. We need to define the safety standards. We need to agree, like Nigel said, on the engineering. Now there's still a lot of ideology in hydrogen, people opposing themselves to CCS, people opposed to blue. I say if you have nuclear in France and they want to use that nuclear to make hydrogen with electrolysis, that's fine, so long as we're sure it doesn't have CO2. Now the ideal model is a model where you can produce hydrogen if you have a home which is off the grid and you have some land and you want to put solar or wind infrastructure at home, you can do that. I'm perfectly happy to install solar panels on the roof. But the big types of volumes that Germany needs to convert their steel plants from coal to hydrogen, the volumes that the minister talked about, Ilva, the kind of the bulk volumes. Today we announced with Iris Ceramiche, the world's first hydrogen factory to make hydrogen ceramics, the kind of the base load bulk volumes you need for heavy industry. There's no way you can do that with solar installed on the roof. You need to go and get the solar where it's sunny and get the wind where it's windy. So we will have big quantities of wind hydrogen coming from the North Sea, big quantities of green hydrogen made by sun coming from the Sahara. And the beautiful news is that the cost of transportation is very low. To move hydrogen, and it's exactly the same as natural gas, by the way. When you turn on your heating here in Milan, the gas comes from 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers away up in Siberia. So we have to do what we've done before, and SNAM is at the forefront of this effort because we've done it before. What's really funny about and interesting, historical, about this agreement we announced today with Iris Ceramiche and Federica, thank you for being here. Federica's father, who's still the chairman of Iris Ceramiche, was the man who signed the first deal with SNAM 40 years ago when SNAM brought natural gas to create the ceramic district in Italy that became the world leader in export and manufacturing of high quality ceramics. And so we're replicating this, which brings me to the third challenge is how do we, once we've agreed that it's a centrally produced model, transported and stored in a centralized way, how do we break the chicken and egg? The minister was very explicit. The hydrogen strategies that Portugal really broke the ice and led the way in Europe, now we have them in Germany and France and the UK very soon in Italy. They all talk very similar languages. We're going to build hydrogen clusters, so the hard to abate sectors will aggregate around clusters. We will build mobility infrastructure to make sure a truck from Germany can come all the way to southern Italy and go east and west. We will use hydrogen in power plants. And what Anna was saying before is what we need to do in Asia. And I'm very happy to have the Asia Development Bank present here today. We need to turn the coal plants and the gas plants into hydrogen hubs eventually. And because the cost curve is so steep, we can do that by actually saving money if you look at it on a full life cycle. So this is no longer part of the energy transition. You know, I spend my summers in a place in Tuscany next to a power plant called Montalto di Castro. This power plant was a nuclear plant that was closed, turned into an oil plant that was closed, turned to a single cycle gas plant that was closed, and now turned into a combined cycle gas plant that was closed. So 4 energy transitions on the same factory. Once it moves to renewable energy, with hydrogen to help manage the intermittency of renewables, that's the forever infrastructure. It's not a transition that will change again. Once we connect the sun of the Sahara to the factories in Germany, or the sun and the wind in the Middle East, like Patty was saying, to factories in Japan or Korea, like they're doing through liquid ammonia, that corridor, that's like the Roman roads that we're still walking on today that were built 2,000 years ago. And so the cost of capital for that type of infrastructure will come down. Once we've defined the rules of the game, including safety, the industrial model, these projects become bankable, and there's a lot of private and public capital out there to start really investing on these projects. So the real challenge is to make this happen in 5 years and not in 15 years, as Nigel always reminds us.
And for this, as you were mentioning before, the role of regulation, the role of setting international standards and of ensuring interoperability between countries, between grids, between systems is going to be key. So one question for you, Francesco, is how do you ensure, and what is IRENA's role to facilitate the creation of common rules and to sort of facilitate collective action on hydrogen at a global level?
So what IRENA can do, in fact, is what is in the agreement we just signed with Marco, what we can do in all aspects
So we haven't been waiting 15 years
No,
to do
no,
that.
no. We start tomorrow. I think also, Paddy, before or later, we have to sign something together. Eh?
Sure.
So I think that is important to the market design is very relevant, as I say in my. So naturally, we are going to from a system that was centralized and based on fossil fuels sources, and this also is reflected in the way we do the contract on the basis of marginal cost or wholesale prices. So these kind of things, for the time being, are not supporting the how to say the widespread of renewables, and this will affect also in relationship with green hydrogen. So working on this aspect is very, very important. Certification, we are working with World Economic Forum. In this respect, it's a little bit full area where many are working. So we have to understand how we can really make the difference on that aspect, but this is absolutely relevant, as has been just said, because the one that I have to use, the hydrogen has to understand what kind of hydrogen they are using. And also in our agreement, this is the way to find models for bankable project. So we were discussing today how it could be possible, especially in Asia, to take profit of the existing coal plant that has to be dismissed to be coherent with the Paris Agreement. How there could be a chance for economic and bankable project to attract the money that is on the market. So all this kind of thing, and we have also this way to work on the basis of our collaborative framework. That's in a way where we make possible for the public and the private to work together. This is very relevant. And also is very relevant in our opinion, the fact that the agency, that is the global agency dealing with the energy transition. So we have now 167 members. We will be 170 by the end of the year. We had 20 countries, so we have all the United Nations members. This is important because when we talk about these things, you cannot think that you can really teach to the others from the rich to the poor country what they have to do, because they will never do. So you have to try to find a way for working together. So the forum of ARENA is very relevant. So there are the companies, there are the association linked to the world of hydrogen. We are also working on this new report on the geopolitics of hydrogen that I think could have an important impact. And naturally on the technologies, we all know that electrolyzer has been decreasing cost in the last years by 60%. We project as ARENA that the way they will decline in the basis of the strategy that are already in place by another 40% in the short term and by 80% in a longer period. But as Marco taught us, the electrolyzer are not like the panel. So new technologies that you can just try to make it more and more efficient and decreasing the cost. It's a more complex reality where the way the interface in the model that we choose is relevant also in the way it could be effective. So these are all instruments that we have, and we also want to start to work on the mineral rare earth that at the end will have an impact on this story. And hopefully always to look positive and try always to make clear, and it's also we suggested in the view of the COP. If you allow me 1 minute to comment on this, because I think that before or later you were asking what do you expect by COP. Yeah. So I can anticipate you in the sense that what I expect that the COP finally realize that the COP of the past are not anymore meaning. So that is not anymore a negotiating space. They will open heavily to the privates, working together and trying to understand where the barriers are, how we can make better, work better on projects, how to ensure bankability, make all things, people exchanging experience, so making the world go in a direction without just political declaration. Because sometimes when you work in practice, you're able to do more than you can get for the political declaration in that sense.
The 20s must become the decade of implementation, as I think you have said before. Of action, yes. Indeed. And I wanted to ask Anna now, because we have been talking about the regulation a bit, we have been talking a bit about the production of hydrogen, the impact of electrolyzers and their cost going down. But then, of course, you have to move around hydrogen as well. And of course, hydrogen is very light in the sense that for 1 kilogram, there is a lot of energy in 1 kilogram of hydrogen, but at the same time, it is very big. The volume is big. So either you cool it down and it needs to be cooled really to a very low temperature that is difficult to ensure, or you need to compress it, or of course you move it around with the existing infrastructure like gas ducts. So my question for you, Anna, is do you think it will make sense to talk about a global hydrogen market, or production will more be localized and use it as store of energy for seasons or for times when renewables aren't really there to cover the gaps?
Well, I really believe that in the beginning, the market will start in a decentralized form, taking advantage of the fact that electrolyzers have a particular characteristic that is completely different from SMR, which is the fact that they're very modular. So we can take advantage of that characteristic and really size and set up projects according to the local consumption. And by doing that, we can really avoid the fact that today we don't have a logistics in place. I mean, we don't have the transportation is not a mature part of the value chain yet. So I really believe that the market will start in a decentralized form in locations where you combine, demand that is closer to competitiveness, demand that has no alternative, in locations where you have good resources, renewable resources, and access to water, so where things come together, right? And you have many locations and many sites that many people are looking at where things come together. But ultimately, I believe that the market will evolve in a global market, like it was already mentioned here today. In fact, it's not just a question of relative competitiveness, because of course that will play a role, the relative competitiveness of different regions, but it's also a question of not having enough resources, not having enough supply in the places where you really envision to have demand for hydrogen. And in Central Europe, for instance, in Germany has it very clear, and it's not just Germany, Netherlands, other countries have it already assumed very completely, it's completely clear and in their strategies that they will become net importers. And so the momentum is already being established at the diplomatic level, of course, but also when talking about plans to develop infrastructure to really make this happen and make this a reality, to have a global market where we can use, infrastructure that already exists today and can be repurposed, part of it, or build new infrastructure, and maritime routes, of course. To make this a global market and bring together the places where you have local resources and competitive production with the places where you have the demand.
Thank you very much, Anna. And I mean, this is such an interesting conversation that someone wants to barge into our conversation, but I will now I want now to ask one question to Paddy, because of course, Saudi Arabia, where our ACWA is based, is now an energy exporter, and what I would like to know from Paddy is how does he plan to address these challenges and how to get the hydrogen that gets produced in NEON and the hydrogen that ACWA will continue producing over the years to the markets in Europe, in Central especially, and Northern Europe, where there might be more need for their energy. Of course, we have talked about gas tax. We have also mentioned ammonia before. How do you plan to move around the hydrogen, Paddy?
Yeah, so the Kingdom's ambition is very, very clear. They've already come out and started to articulate it. As we become more confident through this first project, what we can see is the ability to be able to deploy 10 of these within the next decade. That's the ambition, okay? So going from 240,000 tons per year to be 2.5 million tons of green hydrogen. The first project, we are doing it through the kind of easy way, converting it to liquid ammonia and shipping it. We think that fairly quickly we should be able to, and Marco has already demonstrated SNAM how to move hydrogen through pipelines. I mean, they do it very effectively, natural gas, and they're already starting to blend. So we see a pathway, and it's not a very complicated pathway, to be shipping green hydrogen through pipelines into Europe, which is a big market. And then, of course, there will be a certain amount of industrial capacity that will be developed in the Kingdom that will absorb some of this hydrogen. So, I mean, the predominant sort of transport mediums in the immediate terms would be first liquid ammonia by shipping, then the pipelines would take over, and of course, even shipping. Us being able to ship hydrogen over long distance. There's already the first hydrogen ship under development. So we expect to see that this transportation and storage solutions getting dealt with as we continue to race towards building capacity at a competitive price.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would have many more questions, to be honest, but unfortunately our time is over. So I will thank our panelists here, Marco, Francesco, Paddy, and Anna, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Grazie, Alessandro. Thanks to Francesco and Marco. We are now going to the second part of our conference. And thank you also to our guests connected remotely. I hope next time, Anna, and we have you in Milan physically, maybe for another. Paddy and Anna, thanks a lot for another conference when there's more to discuss about hydrogen in the future. So thank you very much. So we are going now to move into the second part of our discussion. We have discussed, which is the role that hydrogen could have in the energy transition. Now it's time to discuss which will be the use of hydrogen. And I'm glad to introduce, and I'm moving to Italian, quindi passo all'italiano, and I'm saying to the non-Italian speaker, you can have a simultaneous translator if you need it, while we speak a few minutes in Italian with Massimiliano Fedriga, Presidente della Conferenza delle Regioni, nonché Governatore del Friuli Venezia Giulia. Grazie mille per essere con noi, buonasera.
Grazie a voi dell'invito.
Governatore, qual è l'importanza che lei vede nel futuro dell'idrogeno come Presidente della Conferenza delle Regioni, ma anche al vertice di una regione in cui c'è uno snodo strategico importantissimo, qual è il porto di Trieste?
Intanto mi scuso di non essere presente fisicamente con voi, ci tenevo a farlo, ma purtroppo, come ho potuto comunicare, degli impegni mi hanno trattenuto in Friuli Venezia Giulia, però vi ringrazio dell'opportunità di poter parlare oggi, perché sia il Friuli Venezia Giulia, ma penso tutte le regioni italiane debbano essere protagonisti in generale verso una transizione che possa portare, come previsto dagli obiettivi dati dalla Commissione europea stessa, verso un impatto zero per quanto riguarda la produzione e quindi la produzione di energia stessa. Per questo le regioni sono tutte impegnate. Se mi permette, voglio fare una premessa che ritengo importante. La sfida, e l'idrogeno penso che ne sia la testimonianza ed anche uno dei principali protagonisti, è quella di garantire una sostenibilità che non sia semplicemente una sostenibilità ambientale, semplicemente ovviamente importantissimo, e scusate se utilizzo la parola semplicemente, ma per sottolineare che la sostenibilità deve essere anche quella economica e una sostenibilità sociale. Altrimenti rischiamo che le buone intenzioni che a livello globale oggi esistono verso la transizione green si trasformino in realtà in propaganda che non possa dare un reale futuro alternativo al nostro pianeta e quindi alle future generazioni. Su questo quindi le regioni e anche con lo sviluppo delle tecnologie di idrogeno vorrebbero essere protagonisti. Non a caso anche nel PNRR sono previste delle azioni specifiche, basti pensare alla missione 2, che non siano semplicemente diciamo la ricerca sull'idrogeno, che ritengo particolarmente importante, ma vogliono andare verso l'utilizzo diffuso di questa tecnologia. Già oggi molte regioni, penso a Regione Piemonte, che ha portato già un'iniziativa avanti insieme all'Università del Territorio, penso a Bolzano, che è capofila di EUSALP per quanto riguarda tutta la transizione e quindi anche le politiche legate all'idrogeno. Penso a Regione Friuli Venezia Giulia, che oltretutto ha firmato proprio con SNAM un protocollo insieme all'università e già ci sono dei tavoli operativi per cercare di strutturare anche un centro di ricerca specifico sull'idrogeno che possa dare delle prospettive, soprattutto nel medio periodo, e seguire anche le 3 fasi previste dalla Commissione europea per arrivare al 2050 con un utilizzo estensivo dell'idrogeno che ovviamente comporta anche tutto diciamo, il potenziamento delle energie rinnovabili, quindi degli investimenti importanti, ma anche un cambiamento di tipi di produzione che deve avere il nostro continente, sicuramente, ma anche il nostro paese.
Grazie mille al governatore Fedriga. Speriamo al prossimo forum di averla con noi qui a Milano, e intanto ci saluti il Friuli Venezia Giulia. Speriamo di vederci presto.
E poi, se mi permette, voglio sottolineare la disponibilità di tutte le regioni italiane a lavorare direttamente sul tema. Io penso che possiamo raggiungere questo obiettivo, mi scuso se vi rubo ancora qualche secondo, ma se riusciamo a creare un'alleanza tra istituzioni. Sono obiettivi importantissimi, ambiziosi che ci siamo dati. Penso che possiamo farlo soltanto se Unione Europea, governi nazionali e territori, e quindi per quanto ci riguarda le regioni, lavorano insieme e possano creare sinergia. Altrimenti ho paura che se qualche istituzione pensa di essere autosufficiente, rischiamo di non raggiungere questi obiettivi. Noi ci teniamo particolarmente, quindi non parlo semplicemente a nome del Friuli Venezia Giulia, ma a nome di tutte le regioni italiane. Grazie ancora e buon lavoro.
Grazie mille. Abbiamo parlato insomma dell'importanza delle istituzioni e di fare sistema nel futuro, nella corsa verso l'idrogeno. And now I'm switching again to English. Thank you to Massimiliano Fedriga. Now I'm moving to the final panel of our discussion. So we discussed which is the role of hydrogen in the transition, the road to net zero. Now we're going to discuss how hydrogen can help to decarbonize, especially hard-to-abate sector like steel, cement, glass, but also transportation, which is the use of hydrogen, and how transportation is crucial in a road to net zero emission. I'm particularly proud to host this panel, having followed the transport industry for more than a decade for Bloomberg News. So I take my seat and I welcome my guest for this panel to join me. I already see connected remotely, I think from Stockholm, tell me if I'm wrong, and Martin Pei, CTO SSAB, he's connected remotely. He's going to tell us later on what SSAB is doing and their project and the way they managed to produce carbon-free steel already. They already delivered the first steel made from essentially carbon-free hydrogen. We're going to talk with him later. Please welcome Henri Poppa-Lafarge, CEO of Alstom. Thank you, Henri. Gerrit Marx, who is at the moment he's design CEO of Iveco Group. You all know that Iveco Group is being spun off from CNH Industrial, so some important months ahead for Gerrit. Then we have Federica Minozzi. Thanks again, Federica, for being with us, CEO of Iris Ceramica Group. Today they signed an important agreement with Snam, and we also have CEO of Trenitalia, Luigi Corradi. Grazie mille. Thank you all for accepting our invitation. I will start with Henri because it's not a joke. He has a train to catch soon for an important Rome. It's a Trenitalia train.
We stop the train. We stop the train.
A Trenitalia train to Rome. I think there's just some important meeting. So I will start with Henri. As I was studying, to prepare well for this panel, I hope I did some good homeworks. But anyway, I found very fascinating the way that Alstom introduced a few years ago and your hydrogen train because, and we discussed it earlier as we met before, more than about 50% of European railways are not electrified yet. That means we have 50% of the network were managed by diesel train yet. So hydrogen is a real solution there. Can you tell us what Alstom has done and what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you all of you for attending this conference. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And yes, just to look back at Alstom history in hydrogen. Actually, we launched this train in 2014, so already 7 years ago. And during 4 years, up from 2014 to 2018, we developed the train. We test by all the traction boxes, the hydrogen fuel cells, and so forth. And in 2018, the first prototype trains were put on operations in Germany. Between 2018 and 2021, during 3 years, we had immense number of kilometers, more than 200,000 kilometers of operations. And the trains have proven to be extremely reliable. They have an autonomy between 1,000, 1,500 kilometers. They're extremely comfortable with no vibration, no noise. So it's something which is working extremely well. So now the next step is obviously 2022, mid-2022, where there will be a full fleet of regional trains under operation, under commercial service in Germany, and then 2023 in Italy. So why have we launched, and this is back to your point, why have we launched this train? We were absolutely convinced at the time that hydrogen train was the only solution to electrify the entire network. 50% of the European network is not electrified. Actually, only 1/3 in Italy, but in average in Europe, 50%. Which means that roughly 30% of the fleet is regional fleet is diesel, is running out of diesel today. And this had to be replaced. Battery is an option for short distances, like up until 100 kilometers. Electrification through catenaries is extremely expensive. And therefore, hydrogen was the only solution. But having said that, and I liked what has been said previously, we had no idea of how many roadblocks and all these issues of chicken and the egg, how we could really bring this train to the market. It had to find its way, but we didn't know what would be the way. And the Rex is actually, indeed, there were a lot of roadblocks. A lot of them in terms of certification, homologation, and here we are working with IRENA, and we are extremely pleased to work with IRENA in Italy to find the right certification. Supply of hydrogen was another one, and clearly I will get out of this panel extremely positive with all what has been said in terms of supply of green hydrogen, cost of this hydrogen, because the cost in 2014 was extremely expensive, so as well, I mean, the cost had to go down. So that's the second roadblock. We have to say as well that there was a kind of general public acceptance.
Yeah.
And when we've shown, there is a big fair, InnoTransfer, we call it, for railway fair. We've shown the trains twice, one in 2016, one in 2018, and each time it has gained some public momentum. And the fact that now we have 3 trains which have run all across Europe, from Germany, Austria, Italy, Netherlands, France, Poland, in all sorts of circumstances, it has gained more and more public acceptance. And I'm pretty convinced that when there will be the first fleet into real operation, into real commercial service, then everybody says, now it has come for real.
And when this is going to come?
So in Germany, it's like summer 2022, and here in Italy, it's end of 2023. So there will be a full fleet, purely under hydrogen service. But one of the positive factors of the hydrogen trains is that as they are running like diesel ones in terms of day-to-day operation, you can actually have a mixed fleet. That's what we have in Germany when we have prototype trains. You can have in a fleet for a certain service, 10 trains running out of diesel and 3 trains running out of hydrogen, because it does not need any more infrastructure than just a fueling station at the depot. But they are running with the same kind of characteristic that diesel fleet. So it's very easy transition.
Feel the difference?
The customer feel a huge difference. It happened that I was indeed in Germany yesterday. I was in Berlin, and we could take the hydrogen train from central Berlin to our factory, which is north of Berlin in Ixdorf. And it's a very smooth ride. When you take it, there is no vibration at all. When you take a diesel train, you have to admit there is some type of vibration, there is some type of noise, you cannot really work inside, and so forth. Here it's even smoother than just a classical electrical train. It's extremely smooth. And then you can feel it, you know it, and of course, by design, we make sure that everybody knows it as well. And the passenger feedback is extremely, extremely positive on these hydrogen trains.
And let me make another question. I know you have to leave, then I move to my other guest. When do you see, you expect a demand rising? When you'll have the first fleet and your customer will see,
Yeah, it's a very good point. My feeling and hearing what's happening on the price of hydrogen and so forth. So we were like pioneer alone in Germany for a few years. Today, there are plenty of different prototype projects or small projects. In Italy, we have a small fleet coming, 8 trains plus 6 trains, so forth. We have the same in Spain, in the UK, in France. So I think, let's say 3-4 years up until 2025, this kind of small-scale fleets, and starting in 2025, large orders, because if you want to have the fleet being replaced by 2035, which is roughly 5,000 trains in Europe, then you have to enter into mass production. And this will be mostly between 2025 and 2035. So we have still 2-3 years of slow start, and then 10 years of heavy production of hydrogen trains.
Thank you very much. Hope you have a smooth train ride this evening.
I'm sure. If
you have any issue.
I'm in the hand of my friend from Trenitalia.
We do our best.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to have to leave. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks. Grazie mille. I think I'm also telling the people upstairs I'm moving to the next chair now to leave and home. So, Gary, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Iveco has always been betting on natural gas. I've been following the sector for a while, and I remember a little more than a decade ago, former Fiat CEO Sergio Marchionne, who was telling me, yes, electric cars are coming, and but we have natural gas here. It's really cut emissions so much, and is less sexy than probably the electric cars for the customers, but on the track, this is the way to go. Iveco has always been quite active on that field, and now since a couple of years, we see hydrogen as the next with similar sort of engines. So can you tell us, and I don't know if you all know, but no, Iveco is going to be listed soon, so it's going to become, you know, a listed company again, not again, because it will be probably the first time in a while. Anyway, but it's important to understand which is your strategy and why do you think hydrogen could play a role?
Thank you for having me here today. Look, the methane or the gas or biogas now increasingly wasn't a bet. It was insight and knowledge. It was actually driven by science. You know, it has substantially less NOx emissions and substantially less particle emissions. And if we do this with biomethane, it's actually 95% renewable, you know, well to wheel. So therefore, that was a push done several years ago. And you know, we as a truck OEMs, we have to change, and we actually want to change. And we have to go for basically a 50% CO2 cut of all newly registered heavy-duty trucks by 2030, possibly to 55 or 60%, so that goes even higher. In order to do that, we got to get to electrification, and there are two technologies there. The one is the pure battery electric version, and then the one we talk about today is the fuel cell range extended. You can call it a hybrid version of the truck for kilometers up to 1,000 kilometers range for the heavy-duty trucking. And we looked at this challenge and we thought, so how will the future look like? And we are, you know, by science, convinced that the future will be that on-road trucking, on-road heavy-duty transportation is going to be up to 20% driven by renewables like biomethane, because this fuel is going to give us range, and range is for heavy-duty trucking of utmost importance to complete the mission. So everything that goes above 1,500 kilometers of range you need in a vehicle, I think biomethane is the carbon neutral answer to that. Then you have everything, and that's the bulk of the transport, that goes between 500 kilometers a day, you know, or per trip, up to, let's say, 1,000 kilometers per trip. And that is clearly hydrogen fuel cell technology, range extension. And that is a very rational, science-driven you know, answer, because we need to have refueling times of 15 to 20 minutes. This is impossible with batteries. Yeah. And the batteries, when we look at our battery electric modular platform, which we have presented just 2 weeks ago with our partner Nikola Motor, where we are the only ones having a articulated tractor platform that can host entirely battery electric as well as fuel cell range extended technology. You know, the battery electric is good for 400-500 kilometers overnight charging, 2 hours per 80% charge, and you definitely need green energy for that, because that is the most efficient way to use that energy. But when you go into the peak, the sweet spot of the heavy-duty trucking, that is really those trucks that need between 500 and 1,000 kilometers of range. These are the trucks you see on the roads, on the highways every day, which is 60% of the newly registered vehicles every year, and those need quick refueling, they need the range, they need the energy density, and they need to earn money. It's business to business. This is not fashion industry, what we're doing. Whatever we produce needs to earn money for someone else to provide a service that is competitive. I mean, the question that everybody can ask themselves is, how much are you willing to pay more for a bottle of water, or let's say for a bottle of beer from Munich when it comes and hauls over the Alps with a hydrogen fuel cell truck? You know, how much more are we willing to pay in France or in Germany for certain products from Italy? And you know, are you willing to pay more or not? Yeah? And we stress ourselves, and we want to have the TCO parity that Marco also stressed. You know, TCO parity comes. It's a $2 per kilogram hydrogen, if you will, but that is not yet pressurized. If you pressure it up, you distribute it, and you have it in the form that we need it, which is in fact 700 bar at the refueling station with a mass flow that can refuel 70 kilograms in 15 minutes. This is 10 times more performance than today's passenger car refueling stations can bring. So if you are able to do that, we are TCO parity to diesel, and then, you know, the Bavarian beer or the Italian water or the French fish
Why
doesn't
Bavarian
cost
beer,
more.
Italian water? Bavarian beer, Italian Prosecco, maybe. No?
Prosecco, yeah. I
still felt a little bit, you know, that the comparison was not that fair. You know?
Yeah, but you would have picked on me again, regardless what reference I would have taken. So this is just a science-based answer to decarbonization of the transport, and those 3 technologies will be in the mix. Battery electric with green energy charging, where the grid permits to do it, because the grid is not capable of charging large quantities of trucks. Then you have hydrogen for the big mass, and you have biomethane for the true long haul, 1,500 kilometers and above, and that's the energy transition.
I'll come back to you later now discussing about what you need now to make this happen. But you mentioned Nicola, no? You presented, it was 10 days ago, something like this, no? The first real result that journalists and customer could touch. Are you going to further boost your collaboration with Nicola? Where are we going to see Nicola truck on road?
Well, we delivered like clockwork. I mean, I talked through this whole 100-day sprints that we've been engaged on over the last 2 years, and we've promised to bring an battery electric articulated truck by the end of this year, and we deliver. And we even showed the fuel cell electric version alongside with it, and we even showed and revealed a plant capable of producing 3,000 of those vehicles in Germany for the European market as a first step into that direction. So we absolutely delivered on plan. And the partnership has been very mutually beneficial and complementary, with Nicola providing, among many things, especially the software inside that vehicle, connecting all the various different systems. And that has been a very, very nice partnership. And of course, we're going to continue that. We double down, and we will now propel with the European versions of the trucks that we have revealed 2 weeks ago, which were US wheelbase versions. And we're going to, in a year from now, we're going to have the European wheelbase versions, as we promised in 2019. That we had the 2 years time frame already, and 2 years ago nobody was thinking about hydrogen in heavy duty long haul trucking. I mean, it was always there in buses and somewhere 20 years ago, but it never really had the thrust to go anywhere. And 2 years ago we scientifically substantiated, we took
let's say that the pressure
forward.
You got from the press to manage to let you deliver and show that you are on track, right? So
no, look, I mean, we are not trying to please anyone.
No,
we just want to do the right thing. And the right thing is to get this transformation going and get it done. If I listen to all the opinions and views around me all the time, I couldn't even sleep. So once you have figured out the scientific way to go, and then you do everything you can, and you put everything into place in order to pursue your goals, regardless how hard it is. And I think the team of Iveco, the team of FPT Industrial, of Nikola Motors, had done an outstanding job pulling these things together despite COVID crisis, despite social isolation, despite now we are in the middle of a huge chip crisis, semiconductor crisis. By the way, also the battery cells are super scarce, which is a thing nobody talks about when you want to have your electric cars. There's not enough capacity there, let alone a concept for recycling those things. So I think in the end, when you go end to end, 3 technologies will prevail, the ones I mentioned: gas, methane, and battery, in their individual mixes. And when you know what's the right thing to do, you just pursue it with all means, and then whatever. You don't want to please anybody. You want to do, you want to change it, and you want to change it to the better, i.e. do the right thing. And
as you said, you're business to business, so you really need to deliver products that your customer wants and can help them.
Absolutely, and I can only echo what my previous speaker was saying here about driving it. If you go into one of those electric heavy-duty trucks they have not even a transmission. They go 0 to 80 in less than 15 seconds with 40 tons of load. The rear axle that we developed and engineered in Turin, in Italy, and produce it in Italy, has 1,100 horsepower. We will say now 1.1 megawatts of output. We're going to cut that back because I think that massive amount of power is not necessarily needed. But cutting it back gives us a lifetime. Yeah? So this is why we've been going that fast. And in the US, trucks go 120 kilometers per hour. So in order, it's not the 80 that we have. They go 120. So we need more power. So in the end, no, I mean the whole package just worked out nicely, and the drivers love it.
I think it's really interesting for us, who has been following through the day the discussion, because and for we also discussed it earlier with even Marco with this book. It's very interesting to have you here, because you are showing, all of you here on the panel, you are showing that hydrogen is not for tomorrow, but it's a solution you are working on now. No, so that's quite interesting, and that's why I'm moving to Federica. Federica Minozzi, CEO of Iris Ceramica Group, which is a leading manufacturer of high-performance ceramic surfaces. And today you just announced a deal with Snam, and you will be, the first in your sector in the world using green hydrogen. Why Iris Ceramica wanted to be the first and you bet on hydrogen before the others?
That's a very good question. I think I was actually born with the sustainability in my DNA because my father just believed in taking care of the environment from the very beginning. So the company was founded back in 1961. And from the very beginning, my father started to put boards inside the plants with the equation economy equals ecology, meaning that we had to take care of raw materials, to recycle, to take care of pure water, to take care of air, because otherwise there couldn't be life, there couldn't be economy anymore, there couldn't be business. So that's actually the environment I was born into. And so we really believe in producing in a green way, but eventually what it all comes to, and we were talking with Marco during lunch about this issue, is whether you can manage to make hydrogen as something that is also competitive as compared to other form of energies like methane or power, whatever. And I think that currently we are facing a period when natural gas is increasing day by day. 2 days ago, methane increased 12% in 1 day, and it's still increasing. And there's also a shortage of natural gas all over the world. So this has become a big issue for the next future. So what I think is, if you take into consideration the combination of two different price increases, that is gas and the taxes on carbon emissions, so European taxes, I mean, well, actually, I think that nowadays is the day when hydrogen is going to become also competitive. And the issue is the supply-demand dilemma, as Marco said before. We didn't have any other chance than to create this power plant by ourselves. So we were going to install, we're building the building from scratch, and we're putting a solar panel installation just short of 20,000 square meter of solar panels. And so we're going to empower the electrolyzer directly by this power getting electricity coming from the solar panels. But eventually, I think that this will not be the ultimate solution. The ultimate solution will be to create a pipeline, a network, where the hydrogen will be delivered directly to the industries, whatever industry it may be, because when there's a very energy consumption like we are, it's almost impossible to think that everybody will be able to invest so much money on such a plant. So as we did in the 80s together with SNAM, we're trying to do the same today, again with the same partnership.
Maybe not everyone knows it. What's happened in the 80s?
Yeah, in the 80s, my father started negotiating with SNAM because he wanted to, back then, the ceramic industry was empowered by diesel, and it was really polluting. So he started thinking about having access to natural gas. So he started negotiating with SNAM, and eventually they managed an agreement with which SNAM started building the network, the infrastructure, and the pipeline to bring the natural gas directly to the ceramic district in Sassuolo and Castellarano. And this was what allowed that district to really boom out and to become one of the most studied and most important industrial districts all over the world. So we're trying to do almost the same now, trying to repeat the history. And so we're starting with this new plant, and hopefully our example will show that it is possible, that you can do it, and you can produce high quality ceramic materials with green natural gas. And so we think that this will create an example to be followed and that others will follow suit. And this will create the demand for the supply chain to become a proper supply chain.
Thanks. Thank you, Federico. Very interesting. Luigi, I will first go to Martin, who has been waiting for us. Thanks for Mikke for being connected with us. We are discussing about hard to abate, sectors, and what SAB is doing in Sweden can really be seen as an example on how to abate emissions. So SSAB is steel producer, and we know that steel itself alone accounts for about 7% of global house emission. But SSAB has already shown that steel can be produced with 100% of fossil-free hydrogen with the hybrid project, which is a baby of Martin, I would say. Marty, can you tell us how long did it take you to deliver the first steel from fossil-free hydrogen, and what have you done, as we have quite a big steel maker in this country who needs to do something too, probably.
First of all, thank you for inviting me to this panel discussion. As you mentioned, steel is extremely important. It is the most important material for both the say railway, the heavy truck, or personal car, or any industry. That is the most important material. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, currently the steel production technology used widely in the world based on the blast furnace technology emits a large amount of carbon dioxide. And that is because producing steel from iron ore in the blast furnace process uses coal, coking coal, specialized type of coal to accomplish this iron ore reduction process. SSAB has been working very, very hard in the past to reduce emissions from the blast furnace process. And we have reached as far as the current technology allows to the limit. Back in the beginning of 1980s, SSAB together with LKAB changed significantly the process where we use since then 100% of pellets, high-grade pellets, and in our blast furnaces we shut down the sinter plants. So our production in our blast furnaces in Sweden and Finland are among the lowest ones in Europe. But still, we are the largest CO2 emission company in both Sweden and Finland. So back in 2015, we started to discuss how could we make the next step of this technology advancement. Taking reference to what we did 40 years ago between SSAB and LKAB, we realized that next step we will need to phase out coal that we use in current processes and use fossil-free electricity instead. So we invited the Vattenfall and created a hybrid initiative. So since 2016, we launched a very extensive research and development program. We continue to do basic research in laboratory since then. And we have also built the world's first hybrid pilot plant, which has been in operation since summer 2020. And earlier this year, we successfully managed to produce the first batch of sponge iron, completely only using green hydrogen. And that sponge iron has been later on turned into steel products, which was delivered to Volvo Group. And Volvo Group is right now in the process of making the first prototype of a vehicle that will be made by this fossil-free steel. We have shown now the technology works. it will need some time to implement this. And our plan is to construct our first commercial scale demonstration plant in northern part of Sweden at one of LKB's iron ore mines with a capacity of 1.35 million tons of hybrid spongine per year. That should be started in 5 years from now, 2026. At the same time, SSAB is in the process of shutting down 2 blast furnaces in our oxidation steel plant and the coke oven plant, and we will build 1 electric arc furnace melt shop. So from 2026, we will start to deliver steel products at more than 1.5 million tons of phosphate steel to the market. And that will be a very significant step for us. And SSAB has then decided to also transform the 2 remaining blast furnace steel plants, one in northern part of Finland and one in Luleå in northern part of Sweden before 2045. So our aim is to decarbonize the whole production system before 2045 and realize the vision to completely decarbonize from mining of iron ore to steel making to our customers like the companies that have already announced cooperation with us, Volvo Group, Volvo Cars, and Daimler Group, and others. I think that will be a very significant step for the whole industry to explore.
Thanks. Thanks, Marty. I'll come back to you later. I want to go to Luigi, who has been waiting, for a bit now. So we discussed, trains, trucks, the heavy and hard to abate industries. Obviously, Trenitalia is at the center, of this process. So can you tell us which are your plans, to go green, and if hydrogen will play a role?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I'm very pleased to be here because, Trenitalia Railways in general is since years a leading edge technology company. So we are looking always to the best solution to move our people. We start with steam locomotives because there was the cool, but immediately we move on electric. So we were one of the first industries moving on the electricity. Maybe we produce electricity at the beginning because there was no electricity for our train, so we become one of the most important producer of electricity in Italy. And now, why for me it's important to be here? Because it's clear we are in front of another important step. And it's not only we are in front of, we are already in. We are already starting this new path, and we want to be part of it. We have to be part of it. Before it has been said that 30% of our line are not electrified. That's absolutely true. Fortunately, this line has not the number of train, the capacity, the frequency of the other line. That's another important point you have to know. You cannot compare the line that are not electrified with a very high concentration of train we have in the electrified line. So at the end, we are much more electrified than 70%, 30%. That's a very important point for me to be clear. But still, we have this line. And when you take a Frecciarossa, very nice train, we consume to move a Frecciarossa 10 megawatt. You can imagine a small train. It's like of big, or maybe big no, but medium low size power station, but we consume it, we don't produce it. So in general, for me, in Italy we say we are energivori. I don't know how to say in English, but means we are a company who use a lot of energy. So even this 30% of not electrified line has to be sustainable, because the other concept of Trenitalia is sustainability. We are sustainable since 100 years, when we start the electrification. So now, our days when I hear Trenitalia has to be sustainable, yeah, we are. We are in the DNA sustainable, but we have to be better. So we are investing money in new train with less energy consumption, with more recyclability. And now we are in front of this step, what we do in the line that are not electrified. We have different solutions, to be honest. First, because we are electric by DNA, we electrify the line. So where it makes sense, where the line have a high capacity of train, we have to go on with our investment and electrify the line. But if it's not the case, if it makes no sense to spend a lot of money in investing in this line and also waiting a lot of time, you know, sometimes in Italy...
How long it takes to electrify a line?
It could be very various, depending on what can happen all around us. Don't start to be in deep in this discussion, but could be 10 years, could be 3 years. Technically, you know, technically it's easy. Technically it's not an issue. The technology is there.
For sure, you can't wait 10 years.
But we can, exactly. That's the point. We can wait. We cannot wait 10 years, so we cannot invest this big amount of money. Then if the line is short, I would say the short-time solution is battery. Battery is perfect because, you know, we have the pantograph. When we have the line, I can recharge the battery, and then I can go with battery. But how long? At the moment, not more than 80, between 60 and 80 kilometers. If the line is longer, then hydrogen is perfect, is the future for train. We can think about Sardinia, we can think about south of Italy, we can think about Tuscany. There are already projects ongoing where hydrogen is the best. For sure, I'm very happy today because most of the time we speak about environment sustainability, but there is also the economical sustainability, and today we discuss a lot about that. That's very important for me. I compete in a market. I'm not anymore alone with my train, so I have to be sustainable, also economically. So that's overall for me, we are not looking at what happened in the future, but already act on it. Especially in Lombardia, together with Trenord, we will implement the train mentioned before. In 2023, we have the first train hydrogen. Which are the issues, and then I stop because I start to become an engineer, sorry, and maybe become boring, but it's important to you to have a 3 point where we are working now on to solve it. First of all, we have to be double sure about the safety of hydrogen on the train. You know, train is the most safe way to travel, and I want to continue to be very, very careful on safety. But I think the technology is there. I don't believe this is an issue. Second point is norms. Norms are still not ready to be fast in homologating the train, not only in designing the train, but homologating the full line train infrastructure. So we are working on it. As Ferrovie dello Stato with Untitled Chapter, we are supporting this activity. And then the third point is what we discussed. We have to be green. We really want to have a green hydrogen. That's very important. But I think this is a first step then to continue on this path. So again, thank you for everything that's been done with hydrogen because I think the train is a good application.
Thanks, Luigi. We have time for a couple of more questions. We start with Martin. So in 2026, the production of your carbon-free steel, I would say, is going to be ready after, for the market. In those years, and because I want to turn, the aspect on the company side. So which are the main hurdles you have faced? Technological, bureaucracy, the needs for having and making hydrogen, which is becoming now less complex because you have all the knowledge inside. Tell us, how did you get here?
Yes. As I said, that we have been doing research work since quite a long time back. We have now run our pilot plant at 1 ton per hour capacity, stable, good quality, and now we are in the process of planning for this 1.35 million ton plant, and we are doing that as fast as possible. It's not the technology that is the limiting factor. It is actually the process of getting permits to build high voltage electricity transmission lines to our production sites. That's the time limiting factor for us. In northern part of Sweden, there is already today available green electricity, mainly from hydropower, but also very quick expansion of wind power. So we have electricity, we have the technology. It's really timing to get all the permits in place, and then we will need the time for constructing these facilities. That's setting out as the timeline.
Thanks, Martin. Federica, when give us some time frame, no? Also, yeah.
It's very quick, very, very quick. Hopefully together with the help of SNAM, because we're really very confident about their contribution, particularly on the technological side of the electrolyzer, the whole system getting from the solar panels to the electricity and empowering all the industrial plant. Hopefully we will be ready to start industrial production. So we're completely skipping the experimental phase of the project. So by the end of 2022, so next year. This is very ambitious, but yeah, I think we can reach the goal.
No, I'm making this question because I think it's important to put down the project into real a real schedule to see when it's really going to happen. Garrett, you talked Eike about earlier about the fact that long haul trucks hydrogen seems like the perfect fit, but there's something you really need, which is fueling station. No. What are you doing? I know you produce truck, but to be them available for the market, you need to have hydrogen station. Which is the goal in Europe, and what is needed?
Well, what is needed is take the Scandinavian southern Italy corridor, the transport corridor, as an example. There are 6,000 kilometers of all kinds of roads cutting up and down, and in order to have those 30, 40,000 heavy trucks traveling on those streets every day, electrified with hydrogen, you need 300-400 refueling stations at scale with 700 bar and sufficient supply, which is going to come through pipelines, I assume. And what we are doing is we're working with partners, we're working with SNAM, we're working with those who provide refueling stations. We're working on finding the right norms on the refueling protocol, because having a cooled nozzle with 700 bar, 60 kilos, 70 kilos in 15 minutes is from a thermodynamic point of view, from an entire mechanical point of view, an incredibly difficult task to accomplish, which is not just like refueling with diesel. And all these things we put in place, we work with partners, and we're looking forward, because what we have proven with LNG, liquefied natural gas refueling, has proven that for commercial vehicle industry, the refueling network is basically growing like a crystal around the major transport routes, and it keeps growing from there into the more faraway parts of the country. And the very same is going to happen for the hydrogen refueling infrastructure for heavy-duty trucks. While cars need a dense network, trucks need a point-to-point and the transport route green corridor refueling network, and I'm confident that this is going to happen over the next years, and we work with partners on it.
Our research department, Bloomberg New Energy Finance, they have done several studies, and we see that the steel industry and the hard-to-abate industry will brace hydrogen most likely. For cars, still we have to see if there is a way to make it costly, comparable, and effective in use with electric cars. I remember I was looking at some magazine that in 1974 were predicting the era of hydrogen in cars. Hasn't happened yet. For trucks and trains, we see a medium-high likelihood that hydrogen will be used in part. And final question to you, Luigi, because I found very interesting when you said earlier, there are some regions where you don't have enough density of train. I don't know if density is the right word to use, but anyway, to electrify those lines. And this is where hydrogen could play a role. So you said Sardinia or maybe somewhere. That's it?
Yeah, we see mainly Tuscany, Sardinia, Calabria, so the Ionic, the line on the Ionic Sea, as an example for tomorrow. You know, with the PNRR, the region we receive this money. So, and the usage of experience we are having now, thanks to this project in Lombardia, will be used on it. So again, the good point is we are not far away to have the train, the hydrogen train. We are speaking about 2023. So then, thanks to the PNRR, we can have the same project, at least in this free region. And then, you know, there is another idea. We have all the train. And I cannot, let's say, destroy the old train today. There are projects to convert the old train in hydrogen train. I mean, the old diesel train in hydrogen train, just to change a pack. Now I make it maybe too easy, but we are working on it with the suppliers to find a solution. And then I hope we can see hydrogen also in some other line, though maybe it makes no sense theoretically, strategically in the future, but now, yeah, because I have diesel train, can I change it in 6 months with hydrogen, just change a pack? If yes, I can do it tomorrow.
That's very interesting. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Heido, Martin, thank you. I hope next time you will come down to Milan to have a chat with us. Thank you to all my guests to this panel. It was very, very, very interesting conversation, I hope. So as you leave the podium, we get into the thanks a lot again. Maybe we can do an applause. Ciao, Martin.
Thank you. Bye.
We get to the very final part of our conversation. We should have in line Stefano Besseghini from ARERA. Let me see if I see him.
You should.
Hello, good evening. So
Hello.
I leave it to you the floor to conclude this day of conversation and for the closing remarks to our H2 road to net zero. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's very difficult to have closing remarks. I think what emerged clearly in the discussion of today, for which I really thank you for this invitation, because I have to say that it was a very practical, pragmatic, and realistic approach to what we can deal with in the next future to this road to zero emission. And so it's difficult to get the conclusions, but I take one of the sentences that I heard during the afternoon, which is we are working today for a technology that will take place in the future. And I have to say that even from the point of view of the regulation, the approach is similar. And what I collect from the meeting of today is the great attention to the certification of the origin of the hydrogen. This is a key point. This will be an increasingly key point because it's of paramount importance that we are able actually to deliver to the customers a product that has a specific characteristics and issues. And on this we need to work, because I think that Marco reminded that it is difficult to certificate ex post the origin of hydrogen. It's important to follow clearly the supply chain and to understand how each part of this hydrogen is produced. So certification is one point. The other point is on which we are questioning ourselves is how to start with the regulation of this sector, how to approach this sector, how to approach a sector that is in a technology that is clearly deeply related with innovation, because we have to work on different aspects. I think it has emerged very clearly in the discussion today. We have production, transportation, we have use, we have materials to deal with, we have safety issues, we have regulation and norms that we have to apply. So we have a lot of work to do from this point of view. And we introduced, since a couple of years, this idea of we call them the regulatory experiments. I mean, to be able to identify an environment in which those specific kind of experiments that you need to perform prior the delivery of a technology can be easily managed within a regulation that is able to release a little bit the rules in order to allow or to favor the development of this kind of experience. We launched a couple of years ago a specific regulatory experience, for example, for the quality of service in the electric sector that is running in just in these days, and is quite a success. We launched a call for suggestions, for ideas on experiments and ideas on the gas innovation and innovation in the gas sector, and of course many of these many of the ideas came with the topic of hydrogen. So I think that we will assist to more and more experiments, but in the sense not of the research, but in the sense of the prior to delivery of this kind of technology. Last but not least, I think it emerged as well the importance of the sharing of knowledge among the different partners that are involved. I think it's crucial. Probably even Roberto Cingolani in the beginning called for this relevance of the interaction between the different institutions, industrial partners, and regulatory bodies that are involved in this transition. It's really of fundamental importance that we are able to continue a dialogue, a very deep dialogue on the topics that we have to develop. And for example, we are going to organize in the next, in the beginning of November, we have this association of the regulators of the Mediterranean area. We collect 23 regulators coming from the northern part of Africa, from Turkey, from Palestine, from Israel, and of course from all the European countries which are active in the Mediterranean area. And we are going to have a meeting exactly on the perspective of hydrogen from the regulatory point of view. And we will guest companies talking about the technological aspect. But we are trying to understand how the different countries face a topic that of course relies on different substrates. A matter is the transition and the hydrogen strategy in the European countries, and other is an hydrogen strategy in the countries in the north of Africa. So I think this point of discussion is really fundamental, this sharing of knowledge. For this, it's another opportunity to thank again Bloomberg, Gabriel, and NEM for organizing this kind of event. And to be honest, I think it's really important that we continue on the road, that we are not facing one solution that we will be able to bring us to the near or zero energy configuration. We will need to explore a portfolio of solutions, and we must be very able to manage appropriately all the different solutions available. The technology is very often there in order to be competitive and efficient, in order to promote quickly at the lowest cost this transition. Thank you very much, and really compliment for the work done.
Grazie Stefano. Grazie Stefano. So there's no one solution which fits for all, but hydrogen can be part of the solution. I'm wrapping up. I also want to thank the hundreds of people who have been following us remotely via the Bloomberg terminal, live go on our on the Bloomberg or via the web, and for the many questions and ideas you brought up also in our coverage. You can find some of this into our coverage at Bloomberg News. We cover the event, trying to point out which are the main aspect, the main topics that we discussed. Milan is the place of the aperitivo. If there is a hydrogen aperitivo, I will try it tonight. Thanks again to Snam and Irina for having organized with us this event. At the end of the day, execution is key. So there are many projects, many ideas. Now it's time to execute them. Thanks a lot, everyone.